My name is Mason Ray. I shot, directed, edited, wrote, and catered my first narrative feature film, Lamplight, which premiered here at the Atlanta Film Festival. It's about a man who's going through a lot of mental anguish in his personal life that one day gets caught in a tunnel collapse and is forced to survive while also kind of hammering out his own issues and problems, and with the help of another survivor he kind of works on that, and there's a twist ending. A lot of Lamplight had to be filmed in chronological order, so we had to be careful with how much of the car was destroyed in which particular way, because if you destroyed it too much in one way just to get a shot, to place a camera here and there, you could never go back, because everything was very particular. There's drawings all over the car to illustrate how bored I've been, and there's a lot of things that had to be just one and done, so you couldn't go back and mess with it. Now, that being said, a lot of just the standard shots around the car, all of the outside rubble that was the tunnel collapse is real rocks, because real rocks are a lot cheaper than fake rocks. They're a lot harder to use, they're inconvenient, but they are a lot cheaper to acquire. So we built 2 platforms on either side of the car that could hold about 3,000 pounds each. And then we shoved mountains of rock and chicken wire and structural wire all around it just to keep it there. And then on top of that, there were temporary rocks that we would drag over and heave down to just kind of bridge any gaps to make it look like a real tunnel, because ultimately that's what I was going for, was authenticity. If the audience member for a second didn't think that this was a real tunnel, you've blown it. You've blown any kind of thing you're trying to tell them in terms of the terror, the horror, that joy. You're blowing it all if they don't believe it. So it was very important to get those rocks mobile. And once they were mobile, you could put the camera anywhere you want. There's a lovely YouTube series called Red Letter Media, which I think any upcoming filmmaker should watch. And they review films, and they look at films, including bad films, B films and stuff like that, and they nitpick things that you would never ever see but make total sense. And they kind of taught me, everyone sees the flaws. So you have to really care about those little things, because the second the audience starts to feel you're being cheap, they're taken out, and they will stop buying whatever you're selling. And that's the whole point of being a director. You're selling something. You're selling them the idea that this mentally handicapped guy had this amazing life with chocolates and running. You're selling them, whatever you're trying to get across. And if they're not buying it, you're wasting their time. They're going to hate your movie. You have your baby, that thing you worked so hard on. I mean, one particular shot in Lamplight, one particular scene in Lamplight was cut from the film, in which I'm talking to myself in different voices, because it's shot so that every individual voice in the conversation has a different camera angle. So I would cut in between those different camera angles to have these different characters I'm doing talking to each other. And it was 2 days of shooting, because it had to be an exact sequence. And I had to edit that out, because when I got it all together, it was funny to me, but it didn't fit the film. I had to kill the baby. No matter how hard you work on something, no matter how much you love it, if it doesn't fit the film, you have to cut it. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter who it is, because that's the final product, the film. And if it's not fitting, people will know it, and people will ultimately reject it. Keeping motivation on an independent film that takes years to accomplish is something I know a lot about, and it's something that I can't honestly tell you about, because when you start off, if you're crazy enough to do an independent movie on your own, no budget, and you're crazy enough to undertake the sound, and fill in where you can with people who know what they're doing, and trying your hardest to make something cohesive. If you're crazy enough to do that, chances are you're crazy enough to tell everyone to shut up when they tell you this is dumb, or maybe you should take a break, or yada yada yada. I've described it several times now as a mental illness, where you just have the drive to do it. You feel like you know what you're doing. And I think that's where it gets scary, because if you're so motivated and you're so driven, there's a very good chance to lose your objectivity, which is something you absolutely need. If you can't be objective about your film, and you're objective about what looks good, what sounds good, if you lose that objectivity, you might as well just shoot on your cell phone in a bathroom. Like you have to be objective. Oh, well, friends, friends are definitely, and family are definitely motivators. It definitely helps to surround yourself with people that are interested in yourself. But ultimately, it's you. It's you that has to stare at the ceiling at night and go, what have I done 2 years in? When you have a real budget and a real time frame and a real, okay, this is going to take 6 months or 3 months or whatever, you're all right, everyone, let's get going. You're the focal point. You're the rally. You're the horn that sounds and everybody walks behind. And it's quite the opposite when you're the only one doing it, because you need other motivations to kind of keep you going. You need to keep reminding yourself. You need to keep pushing forward. And it's not easy. It's not that. My main advice to any no budget filmmaker about writing a feature is don't do it. And if they still do it in the face of people saying don't do it, then they're the ones supposed to be doing it. Because it's hard, and nobody wants to help and nobody wants to listen, because you're a nobody. You have zero to your name, and you are just trying to prove something. So if you, in the face of all of these difficulties, can push through, then God help you. You're the one who's supposed to be doing it. I never made Lamplight to make a dime. I knew Lamplight probably wouldn't make a dime. I made Lamplight as a business card. I said, if I can do this with my own money and my own time, if I can make this movie, this quality, if I can do all of this by myself in every way, imagine what I could do if you gave me a real budget. Imagine what I could do if you gave me real people to help. So it was never meant to be anything other than a business card. Lamplight was almost entirely shot chronologically. Having the structure of the film laid out first was important. I couldn't shoot from the hip. I couldn't ad-lib whole scenes, because I couldn't go back and change anything. Not only is the car destroyed, but I lost, in the final act of the movie, I lost about 45 pounds to demonstrate the length of time that had passed. So it was like, I can't go back. I'm not going to start eating hoagies and go back to my previous way just to make a scene coherent. So what I ended up doing was I took a big cork board and I color coordinated everything that was dramatic. So I don't want to give too much about the movie away, but certain scenes and certain points that had a lot of emotional weight to them, I would do one color. And I laid it all out, and I quickly realized that the film is super heavy. And I'm a heavy guy, but I'm also, I try to make jokes. I try to consider myself very jocular. And I was like, that's not the movie I want to make. It's easy to make nothing but sad. I could pick up a puppy and just punch it for 2 hours and you've got yourself a sad movie. But that's not what people want to see. You have to be able to raise people up so that you can drop them again in a drama. So I quickly realized, well, I have to put humor in the movie. And what I would do is I would look for long stretches of scenes that had a whole bunch of, I think it was red. Whenever I noticed that the chain of red Post-it notes was too long, I intentionally ended up putting another post-it note, which was just a funny scene. I wrote a funny scene or something like that. It ended up being blue or something. So you eventually got this pattern of red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And that was simply for not only the audience's sanity, but my own sanity. Because, you know, ultimately I'm also in the film, unfortunately. And because it's hard to get someone to act at 11 o'clock at night after you've been doing other things all day, you know, for 4 years, 3 years. So ultimately, I wanted that up and down. I needed that up and down because I really didn't want to end up just being a sad sack the entire time. So yeah, the planning definitely helps if you've got a long entrenched shoot. One of the main influences for Lamplight was the Book of Job, because the Book of Job always fascinated me. Just kind of a quick recap for people who don't know it that well. Job in the Bible is one of God's biggest proponents. He is the most holy of men. He's a good man. He follows the word of God. And the devil and God are talking one day, and the devil says, well, Job is a great guy for you, yes, but that's only because you've given him everything. And God says, all right, well, let's take everything away from him and see if he's still a good man. Job ends up being still a good man at the end of it, and God lavishes all of the wealth of heaven on top of him. Well, I said, well, what if the devil won? What would it take to push a man to kill himself? And it deals with a lot of the ending of the movie, and there's a lot going on, but in the context of the film, it's how far do we have to push our psyche? How far do we have to take a human being we bottle him up and we isolate him in a tunnel, and then we torture him with these kind of mental anguish and his own personal mental anguish. What does it take to push somebody who's your average Joe and make it so that he just wants to end his own life? And I think that I thought that was an interesting question that kind of motivated me when I was writing the film. Nathan Goss, who is not any type of movie personality, but he is a true blue country boy, and sometimes that's the best person in the whole world to have as your friend. That's right. Because he had every connection in the world in terms of acquiring things you would not think human beings were easily acquired with. So I called him up and I said, I need 3 tons of rocks. Do you think you could help me out? You know, I think I got a guy. And a couple of days later, what do we know? I got a whole 3 ton of rocks. And then I said, I need something to crush this car. You got a backhoe? And 2 days later, he's like, all right, we're coming over to the backhoe. So, even on a small picture like Lamplight, it's who you know. Networking, because Nathan really helped me out, and he's not just a good resource, but he's a good friend as well. So. My wife was absolutely I couldn't have asked for a more supportive person. She never once questioned me and never once questioned what I was doing or said, well, let me see the footage to make sure you're not crazy. She just believed in me, and I don't know if that makes her very smart or very stupid, but she believed in me, and I appreciated it. So yeah. I'm mainly active through Lamplight's Facebook, where you just search Lamplight into Facebook, you'll find it. I do have a Twitter, MasonRay4, but mostly the Facebook is the easiest and best way to do it. Also, if you just do a Google search, Lamplight movie, you'll find everything you can about it.
Mason Ray, director of Lamplight, thank you so much. Director, writer, actor,
editor,
lighting, DP,
yeah.
Everything. Rebel arranger.
Yeah, my credits for the film are very short, so I just kind of said everything else is